Okay, good morning. Now I want to teach you something. This one's important because all the folks who are worried about what's going on with the in our country now with President Trump. Here's one thing you really need to understand. It's a term called In Pari Materia. It's a legal term, INPARI Now, what that means is that when there are two laws or two parts of the law, like the Constitution, that deal with related topics, they're interpreted so it gives effect to all of them, okay, instead of interpreted in one way that actually nullifies or contradicts the other. So basically, if you have a newer statute or a newer law that appears inconsistent with an older one, In Pari Materia requires that the court interpret them in a way that avoids conflict whenever possible. So now, how does that come into this? Okay, let me start off by talking about the Trump v. United States case 2024, where they, said that the president is entitled to absolute immunity for criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. Now, for official acts, all immunity. For other acts that are around kind of official acts, then there's presumptive immunity, but then none for unofficial acts. However, when is he going to say that he's not acting and doing something as the president? Okay. Then we looked at the pardon power. Okay. They also talked about how, it was expensive, and for the most part, there aren't any limitations beyond that. They just have to be based upon, federal violations. So now, when you look at that and you look at all the things that has been going on, you look at the fact that, Trump has been firing people if they don't necessarily do what he says, firing prosecutors, firing people at different departments. Basically, a lot of people are afraid to not basically do what he says. And if the court says something, he doesn't like it, he doesn't necessarily follow it, but who's going to do anything about it? Nobody has done anything about it. Now, when you look at that, look at the decision and you say, well, it seems as though that decision had to be wrong based upon In Pari Materia. Because when you look at it, some people are saying, well, all right, what he's doing is he's violating posse comitatus. He's violating, several different statutes. He's doing whatever he wants to do, and he's violating the law. Now, In Pari Materia means that if they got the decision right, then they have created what would need to be an exception to In Pari Materia. That means that the president doesn't have to follow the law. That means that the take care clause, which is actually part of the Constitution, which is Article 2, Section 3, which says that the president has to make sure that the laws are fully executed. There are several cases that went through that and basically explained it. United States v. Nixon, Mississippi v. Johnson. There are several cases that basically explained that the president has to follow, federal law. However, when you look at the United States v. Trump case, what basically it allows the president to basically get around that. So what it means is that all of those statutes that says that the president can't do certain things, that he cannot, profit from the presidency, that he cannot use governor's power in order to, put the guard on duty, the emoluments clause, all those things, what it basically says is that In Pari Materia doesn't count, because there's no way that we have In Pari Materia that all those other parts of the Constitution, that all those other laws are given effect if they say that he has immunity, if they say that, he can necessarily, pardon himself. And whether he can pardon himself, that's not been tested. However, based upon that decision, it implies that he actually can. So if the president does not have to worry about anything, does In Pari Materia exist when it comes to the Constitution? That's why so many people are saying that there's a constitutional crisis, that there's no way that this should be able to happen. Objectively, that decision was far too broad and it would be a mistake. They need to actually reel that in. Otherwise, if they truly meant to do that, then that is going to cause a lot of issues, because if now this case stands for In Pari Materia, having exceptions, then all state law is going to fly out the door. then that means that states are going to be able to, courts are going to be able to say, well, no, there should be an exception, to that. We don't necessarily have to read them the way we thought that we needed to read them to make sure that they actually all have effect. We can create, certain types of exceptions that we want. Until there are limitations on this, this is going to be bad. Now, also what it means is that legal chaos. The court never defined immunity clearly. I mean, we lack guidance on that. The lower courts are definitely struggling. Now, that could lead to what people are worried about, which is election interference. Would that be an official act? Likely. So that means that he can be emboldened to interfere with the elections, refuse to concede, nullify election results. All those things could happen because of that decision. Okay? And then there are plausible arguments that, him threatening, his opponents, all that is because the In Pari Materia is not being upheld based upon this decision. That Trump v. United States decision totally shift the legal landscape. I want, my legal scholars to kind of weigh in on this. There's going to be a much longer conversation, but this one's a short one, just for people who won't want to necessarily watch the long one. But you need to understand what this means. We'll talk soon.